All right, we are now moving into chapter 29, which is the other assignment for this week 10. You are going to like the length of this. It's a little shorter than what you've already picked up. As we have looked at participles, you have looked at the adverbial participles. And as you did that, uh, you looked at both present and aorist, so you've gotten two tenses, and so you picked up the forms of those in those earlier chapters. So when you come to chapter 29, we're going to be looking at adjectival participles. Remember, participles can serve both as adverbs, modifying verbs, or adjectives, modifying nouns, or doing like adjectives do in the general sense. So you are going to be learning some grammar about that in this chapter, but as you will flip through the chapter, you will note that there are no paradigms to learn at all here. So we are just simply learning some grammar. So be sure to note that. Let me run through the chapter, remind you of the exegetical insight on page 268. And then again, your overview. I've tried to emphasize throughout how valuable that can be in helping you just to kind of get your mind around what's going to be showing up in the chapter. Note the grammar both in English and Greek. Read your English grammar. He's going to talk about how English treats participles. It certainly is a verbal adjective in English as it is in Greek, but there are some differences, and you will note those as you go along. So your grammar for Greek, it does two things. First of all, it reminds you of some things. It then gives you a review of the grammar for adjectives. You need to remember that, and you remember the little AAA that we talked about, where you have attributive adjective usually has the article. So that's one of the things that you're going to look for in participles as well, but you'll want to note how he says it. But it's a review of the adjective. He moves at 29.6 into discussing the adjectival participle and telling us some things about that. He talks about the functions of the adjectival participle. Like adjectives, it can be both attributive, that is attributing a quality to the noun, and that simply means it modifies it. And then it can be substantival. Now, I remind you that simply means it can function as a noun. He mentions that the temporal, the time references in the accompanying words like while, after, because, and so forth apply only to adverbial participles. So you won't be looking for that there. Just note that. And then note the function of the attributive. Remember that it is not a finite verb. Don't translate it as a finite verb, but rather translated participle kind of describes the state of something, whether you're talking about adverbial or participle or adjectival. When it is substantival, it can function as a noun just like a regular adjective can. So read that very carefully in 29.8 and note that. 29.9 talks about translation, and that is very helpful to you. Let me just remind you again, keep coming back to the ing form as a beginning point. Then he talks about aspect of the adjectival participle, and you'll want to read what he has to say there. So how are you going to know if it's attributive or substantival? The only way you can know is context. Sometimes you have things there in the context that will suggest to you whether this participle is functioning as a noun or whether it is describing a noun. Then the section 29.12 is also important because it helps you to distinguish between adverbial and adjectival participles, so be sure to note that as well. Then your summary review is also very helpful, and in that review there are 7 questions to ask of any participle you meet, and that's a very important section. What I would do is copy that. In fact, you could do that whole summary section, and it would be helpful to you as you deal with participles. You may want to copy that chart at the bottom of 273 as well. It also is a good chart to keep. You have just a little bit of vocabulary, so let's, to the top of page 274, let's take a look at that. The first word is decomai, dokeo, estio, pempo, and pharaoh. So those are words that you want to be sure you learn and memorize well. And then read your advanced information again. That is going to be very helpful to you. Just to give you some information, don't try to memorize anything in that section unless you're just really highly motivated and want to do so. All right, that takes care of that chapter, so we'll see you in the next video. One of the things I forgot to mention is your exercise for chapter 29, and that's going to be exercise 29 in the workbook, and you will have parsing as usual, and then you will also be asked to translate exercise 29 that says 28 in the syllabus. That's a typo, but it's exercise 29, and it is sentences 3, 5, 7, 9, and 10. All right, thank you for that.